So we're really excited about the Spectrum League and the Spark Club. This year, we're looking to increase our membership, and if you're not a member, we really need your support. It's only $50 a year, but what it does is it tells other organizations, especially those that grant funds, that we're viable and that we have the support of the community. It's only $50 a year. You get discounts on all the events, and so there's a lot of opportunities. So $50 for a family. So on your way out, you might want to check about that or check on our website and just go into Donate Now, and it's $50 a year and you become a family member. For those that are professional members, like Julie or Jack, if you'd like, and others, maybe there's some therapists, doctors, et cetera, attorneys in the audience that work with individuals with autism, your professional fee is only $250 a year. So that really helps us a lot. We're really very pleased to announce that we got 2 grants this year, one from Autism Speaks, and that was for the Spark Club. And we have another one from the Department of Mental Health Services, and we're working on developing that with several other projects. Anybody have any questions about Foothill Autism Alliance? Well, let me then first introduce our first guest. It's Julie Esprit.
E.B. McKenzie.
E.B. McKenzie. Julie E.B. McKenzie. So I'm going to help Julie with her PowerPoint. Julie, here's your mic. If you want me to give this up for you?
Great. So if you do not have one of these booklets, this is what we're working from. I don't hand out the PowerPoint because it's all in here. So if you don't have one, if you would please let him know. The other thing is, I work for the state. State Council on Developmental Disabilities, your tax dollars at work, thank you very much. But part of what the state likes to know, and the federal government, which is actually where the state councils are founded, they like to know that what we do produces something useful for the community. So I have this survey. It's very short. And when we're done, I would be most appreciative if you would take 30 seconds and fill it out. And then just, I guess, leave it on the table over there. Also, at the bottom, you will see a space for you to put your email if you're interested in receiving our newsletter. What this is, it comes from our office, and we alert people to issues, information, things that people need to know that are in the disability community. You might also get an email or two either from our office in LA or a headquarters office in Sacramento, but we do not give your email address away anywhere else. You won't get spammed, I promise you. So, that being said, how many of you have heard of the State Council on Developmental Disabilities? Ha! That's more than I usually get. The joke is always, we're the best kept secret in California. So our job is to provide systemic advocacy for people with developmental disabilities. What does that mean? It means we do things like this. We teach people about their rights, about the service system. We talk to lawmakers about things that need to change to be of benefit to people with developmental disabilities. That happens mostly at our headquarters office. We also keep track of what's going on locally. LA City, LA County for us. What is the County of LA doing? What is the City of LA doing that is either beneficial to people with developmental disabilities or contrary to their interests, and how can we influence them? And then last but not least is we do what we call technical assistance. What that means is you got a question, I'm not getting what I need for my kid from the regional center or from the school district. Help me understand how to navigate the system. We will sit on the phone with you for as long as we need to help you understand what it is that you can do. And like this, we get invited to come do trainings. We offer our own trainings. So we're happy to come back on many different topics. Tonight we're going to focus on the ABLE Act. Well, what does that have to do with living options? Hopefully you'll find out. It's all about money when it comes down to it, isn't it? Can we get the next slide? I've been in this field for about 30 years now, and I've known a lot of adults with developmental disabilities. And I'm sure Jack will concur with me that one of the biggest issues is that people are stuck in poverty. When you receive SSI and other public benefits, you can have up to $2,000 in cash and assets. That's it. I can't tell you how many times I have gone to a group home, for example, and I'll hear the staff talking and they'll say, oh, we got to take Joe out to spend his money down or he's going to lose his SSI. We got to buy him something. Well, that's just backwards, right? So when I heard about the ABLE Act, I was thrilled because it finally creates an opportunity for people to get out of poverty. Up until now, the only option really was a special needs trust. How many of you have set up trusts? Great. This does not replace trusts. It's another possibility. Next slide, please. So with the ABLE Act, the Achieving a Better Life Experience Act, that's what the acronym is for, people have a new way of saving money and protecting their public benefits. It is a tax-advantaged savings account. It allows people to save, and we'll talk about numbers in a few minutes. So if you're wondering, well, how much can they save? We'll get there. They can save money and control is returned to the individual. With a special needs trust, who controls the money? The trustee. With an ABLE account, anyone know who controls it? It's the beneficiary. It sounds to me like you all know about ABLE accounts already. How many of you already, have any of you set up an ABLE account? Has anyone here set one up? It is absolutely available, just not in California. But you can set one up. You could go home from here tonight and set one up, and we'll talk about how to do that. All right, next slide, please. So, eligibility. You must be disabled before the age of 26. There is a push to make that age higher, but right now it's 26. If a person receives SSI or SSDI, there's presumed eligibility. But there are other paths. If a person has a disability with marked and severe impact to their functionality, they'll be eligible. It's pretty wide open as long as it happens before the age of 26 and the disability is expected to last a year or more. This is not the same criteria as a developmental disability. It's much broader than that. Next slide. Everybody can have one account only. The beneficiary owns the account, and for California, it will be a board called the CalABLE Board that will manage the account. Maximum annual contribution. Now we get to the good part. Money. This amount just went up. So if you're thinking, well, I thought it was $14,000. It was until this year. Now it's $15,000 a year that can be added to an account. Earnings are tax-free. At this point, there is no tax benefit to the contributor. Let me say that again. The person making the contribution does not get a tax benefit as of now. There are some states that do give them a tax benefit if they're residents of the state. California's still thinking about this one. the benefit, the tax benefit, comes to the beneficiary in terms of the growth. So usually you put money in an account, it grows, and you have to pay taxes on the earnings, right? Not from an ABLE account. They do not have to pay taxes on money that's withdrawn or the money that grows in their account. The account total right now is $475,000 for account in California. That's a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of years to get there at $15,000 a year. And anyone can contribute. Some employers do matched contributions to things like this. Any of you have a 529 college savings plan for your kids? Mm-hmm. Yes? This is built on the same chassis. In fact, it's called a 529A. So all the various limits that are attached to college savings accounts are attached to ABLE accounts. Question?
So I just, to confirm, you can have $475,000 in an ABLE account and still get SSI?
No. We'll get to that in a minute. We'll talk about how ABLE and benefits relate to each other a little bit later in the presentation. So hang on to that question. If I don't answer it to your satisfaction, circle back to it.
So is the
Yes.
475, is that for the total amount,
Total amount in the account.
meaning all these different set of kids, the total amount? is-
No, in one account. Yes.
If you have a 529, can you roll it over?
We'll get there. Yes.
Is it 15,000 total, or is it per person?
It is 15,000 in any person's account per year.
So two people can't get 15,000.
Right. Right. Exactly. One more question over, two more questions. Yes, in the back.
Yeah, is the total, it doesn't grow in interest or anything like that?
We'll get to that too. So here's my suggestion. Hang on to your questions. I can guarantee I will answer 90% of them by the time we get to the end of this. There's a number of moving parts to this, and you're all doing what I did, which is to jump ahead. Well, what about? Well, what about? Well, what about? Well, what about? We'll get to probably all of them. If we don't, I'm trying to make this a little shorter because we've got Jack and his folks here too, so I don't want to dominate your time. Also, if I skip over a slide, if I say we're not covering this, it's all in your book. And I will give you some great resources to go to learn more information. All right, next slide, please. All right, this was added this year. I think it's a great benefit. If the individual, the beneficiary who owns the account, is employed, they can, out of their earnings, contribute up to $12,600 over the $15,000 limit. Let me say that again. If they are employed, the beneficiary of the account, out of their earnings, they can contribute up to $12,600 in addition to the $15,000, or their maximum gross income, whichever is less. So if they're earning $10,000 a year, they can contribute $10,000. All right? Huge benefit for employed individuals. Next slide, please. 529 question. Yes, you can roll over a 529 into a 529A. That was another change this year. People lobbied hard for this. Your kid's born, I'm going to be a responsible parent, I'm starting a 529A plan the day after my kid's born. I mean, a 529 plan. You start moving towards junior high, high school. Your child has an obvious disability. Now, many people with disabilities go to college, but there are some that won't. What do you do with the money? Well, now you can roll it into an ABLE account. Yay. This rollover does count towards that annual cap of $15,000. So if you roll $15,000 over from the ABLE, the 529 college savings plan into the ABLE plan, You can do it $15,000 at a time. The other option, if you have 2 children with disabilities, and for some reason you want to roll it from one sibling to the other's account, you can also do that. That does not count towards the cap, that 15,000 cap. Next slide, please. If you make excess contributions, grandma and grandpa say, oh, we got a little extra money, let's send 5,000 into Johnny's ABLE account, not recognizing that you'd already hit that 15,000 limit. Whoever it is that you set the account up with will very nicely send the money back and say, thank you, but we can't accept this, and they will notify the beneficiary. Next slide. I'm not going to go over the Savers credit. Read about it in your booklet. Next slide, please. There were a lot of really nice changes for 2018. This whole presentation expanded, but for good reasons. So hopefully they will keep making good changes. All right, so how can you spend the money? You've got the account set up, you've got money going into it. Well, how can you use this money? It is qualified disability expenses. And the fact of the matter is very, very broad use of ABLE funds. They have to be a way to maintain the person's health, independence, quality of life. Now tell me if you can think of anything that can't fit nicely into one of these 3 categories, right? Our suggestion, and the ABLE National Resource Center says the same thing, is keep receipts. So just as you would keep books on anything on your own taxes, in case you're audited, these can be audited. The IRS can audit these. So you want to have receipts and maybe a line on how the money was spent so that you can justify it if and when this account is ever audited. It doesn't need to be big. My recommendation is, if at all possible, teach your child how to do this. Great learning experience for them. Next one, please. Here is some things you can use the money for. I love the last one, funeral or burial expenses. Great. Yeah.
So obviously you can use it for everything, but so what can't you use it for? Probably might be easier.
I haven't come up with anything yet. If it's legal, I mean, seriously, people pose the question and I'm like, can't think of anything. I think you could justify quality of life, right?
Gambling?
You can't give the money to another, you can't donate the money. It's got to be used for the individual. By the way, you can use it for something that may have an ancillary benefit to someone else. So the ABLE account holder says, I want to buy a TV with my money, and the whole family uses the TV. That's fine, as long as it's not in his brother Johnny's room where he doesn't get to use it. Or it's the Porsche that Dad wanted, but he doesn't get to ride in it. You see where I'm going with this? It has to have the primary benefit of the thing purchased must be for that individual, but ancillary benefit is fine. Yes?
I take it that includes investments in the stock market.
Well, this money is invested already.
But I'm saying that the money can be pulled out.
That I don't, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that question.
Because I know it, you can't use it for gambling.
So it's gotta be a purchase of a good or service, I think. I'm pretty sure it's got to be a purchase of a good or service. I don't think that you could use it to reinvest.
There are exceptions to it.
Sure. Yeah, that one I've never heard before. Every time I do this, somebody asks a new question. Yes?
Is the amount that is in the individual's account,
Mhm.
account, is it factored in, taken into consideration with SSI and with Section 8 housing vouchers?
We're getting there, and it's the beauty, it's one of the great beauties of this. So hold on to that question. All right, next slide.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
can we hold questions because we do have another speaker and let's get through the topic and then, yes, we are kind of timed. I'm Patricia Herrera, by the way, and so we want to.
Hi, Patricia.
Hi.
We've emailed, but haven't met.
Yes.
All right. If there is a non-qualified distribution, whatever it might be that you could come up with, it will be taxed and you will pay a 10% penalty on it. All right, next slide. ABLE money is invested. How, now every state has their own ABLE program, and how those investments work depends on that state's ABLE program. You get to choose how you want it invested. I should say the beneficiary gets to choose how it will be invested. Some states offer like savings account type things where the money is protected. You're not going to lose it. But others, just like you have a retirement plan, you can choose how aggressively you want it invested. And you can change your choice, your investment option twice a year. Next one. And I'm not going to talk about different investments because I'm not a financial planner. Okay, the ABLE account information does get reported to Social Security, and you'll see why in just a minute. Next slide. All right. Here's the part you've all been wondering about. The individual may have up to $100,000 in their account and continue to receive their full SSI check. Up to $100,000, continue to receive the full SSI check. If it goes over that amount, the checks are suspended. Eligibility remains. As soon as it goes below that threshold, the checks start up again. All right, starting to see how beautiful this is? We hope it'll be all automatic. This is the Social Security Administration. Next slide. There's one little fiddly thing with this. If you're going to use ABLE funds to pay housing expenses, the money needs to be withdrawn and spent within the same month. It is one of those weird Social Security rules. So if rent is due on the 5th of the month, you pull out the money sometime after the 1st of the month. All right, next slide. With Medicaid, which is Medi-Cal in California, you can have any amount of money in your ABLE account and still receive Medi-Cal. And Section 8 and all other public benefits. ABLE funds do not impact any public benefits except for SSI at that $100,000 level. This is why I was so excited about this. All right, next slide. So the account belongs to the beneficiary. You can be involved, mom and dad, if you're conservator over their financial lives, if you have power of attorney, if they have given you formal legal permission to act on their behalf. You can help. But please, 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 in as much as it is possible, teach your children how to manage their own money. Please. I'm going to get off my soapbox now. All right. Next slide. Differences between a trust and the ABLE account. We've talked about a lot of these. In a trust, it's owned and controlled by the trustee. The rules are narrow. It costs a lot of money to set up a trust, right? A couple thousand bucks in some cases. Able accounts cost virtually nothing to set up, and the person is in control of it. Next slide. I'm not going to go through our examples. They're in the booklet, and this is where I'm going to cut this short. So at the back of the book, you will see a particularly good resource called the ABLE National Resource Center, ablenrc.org. You will learn everything you want to know about ABLE accounts on that website. You can go home, go to that website, see I think we're up to about 38 states that have them set up now. Most of them accept out-of-state account holders. You and your son or daughter could set one up tonight. Really. They have a wonderful tool on the site that helps you compare the programs. So you can select 3 or 4 different states and see all different things about each of those ABLE accounts and decide which one makes the most sense. If you really want it in California, CalABLE, I keep hearing December, though I'm not holding my breath. But once CalABLE is up and running, you can transfer it from Massachusetts or Florida or wherever you set it up to California if you just gotta have it in your home state.
You have a suggestion?
Nope. My suggestion is set these up as soon as possible. I am a huge fan of ABLE accounts. I have had too many friends, adults with developmental disabilities, who have lived on SSI their whole adult lives. And if you want to talk about poverty, that is poverty. So please set your kids up in as much as you can to handle their money and to have money. Get them employed. Help them think about themselves as employable and employed, because you get another $12,600 a year in your account that way. Yes?
Can you address if your child's on SSDI, does it still make sense to set up an ABLE account rather than SSI?
In my opinion, yes.
And why would that be?
Because ABLE accounts are tax advantaged and they can grow. So if you put it in an investment option where the money grows, they don't have to pay taxes on it. I mean, any account where you don't have to pay taxes on the growth is always a better account, in my opinion. But again, I'm not a financial planner. You have to keep your own counsel about that kind of thing. But in my opinion, having known a lot of adults with developmental disabilities who have lived independently, this tool right here is a game changer. Yes?
And what happens when they pass away to that ABLE account?
So it just like any other asset in the person's estate, it gets dealt with in however so if they've set up a,
Because I heard it can go back.
you're talking about the clawback provision.
Correct.
So I just got this clarified by by CalABLE. If the account is in California, what she's referring to is that Medi-Cal can reclaim some of that money once the person passes away. If the account is in California, they are not going to do it. They're not going to exercise this clawback provision. But if the account is out of state, they might do it. It is not guaranteed, but they might do it. So it may be that you decide to set one up now and then move it to California because there's a little bit of a benefit when the person passes away. But that's one that keeps flipping around, and that's where they finally landed. Yeah.
You know, if you have the 528 plan that's already created some earnings and you transfer that all over into an ABLE, will those earnings still be tax-free when you take them out, or will you still have to pay taxes on them?
That's my understanding, is that it's like kind of a blind move from one account to the other. So you could just kind of pick up that whole sum and drop it. Now again, that is subject to that 15,000 max. So if you've got $30,000 or $40,000 in there, you can do it 15 at a time.
If you already have a special need trust, should the able account be outside the fund of the special need?
Is it outside of the funds of the special?
Should it be?
It's,
Or should it be?
yes, because you kind of lose a lot of the benefit if you put it under the special needs trust.
Yeah.
Now you can actually, depending on the terms of the trust, you can put money from the trust into an ABLE account. So if your son or daughter is just starting to learn about how to manage their money, now we all learned those lessons early on in our lives, right? How many of you made big financial mistakes early in your life? I'll be the first to raise my hand. Don't be afraid to have your children make some mistakes if they're going to learn from them. So you put some money into an ABLE account and start teaching them how to use that money wisely. That's my opinion. Yeah.
I have a question about this delta between the $100,000 and the $475,000 cap. 'Cause if your kid is doing well and they've got people who are putting in 15 and they're making enough money that they can put in their own 70, so just to make the math easy, let's say it's $25,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little off, but in 4 years they're going to be at the 100.
Right.
Now, once they hit that 100, even though they can get up to 475, they're going to be penalized because now they're going to lose their SSI.
Yeah, but they're going to have all that money. So viewing it as a penalty, yeah, kind of, but you're talking about, $887 a month.
The accrual idea of getting it up to 475,000 isn't, you want to stay below 100 at all times.
Well, that depends. That really depends. If your goal is to keep them always getting an SSI check, yes. They're going to have all their other benefits, Medi-Cal, Section 8 if they get Section 8, IHSS. Those stay in place even over that 100,000. So you might need a little tweaking of your thinking. Like if somebody's got $100,000 in the bank, is that SSI check really that important compared to now this person has some financial independence? I mean,
I'm not criticizing that you wouldn't want that money in there. I'm just saying that it seems like once you hit 100, you're better off just keeping it at 100 instead of.
well, I would beg to differ, but you got to kind of keep your own counsel about that. We're going to take just like 2 more questions. Okay, way in the back there.
So I know you mentioned something about it being penalized. If you set up the ABLE account here in California, say you move to another state, is that going to be penalized at that time?
No. No, you can leave it here in California, or you can move it to the state you're moving to, or you can have it in a completely different state. You could set it up in Puerto Rico if you want to, I think. It's an American territory, they should have them. I am happy to stay after if you have more questions. I'm also going to put my business cards over there. Pick one up if you want. You can email me or call me if you have more questions about ABLE accounts or about other things, like you're having a hard time with your regional center or your school district, and you just would like some assistance in understanding. What we don't do is go to your IPP, go to your IEP. We cannot function as an individual advocate for you. But we're happy to help you understand how to do it yourself for your child. Have your child call us. We love working with adults with developmental disabilities too, not just their families. In fact, they're our constituents. You guys aren't. Our constituents are individuals with developmental disabilities. We talk to you and teach you because you have such influence in their lives and you're so important in their lives. But ultimately, that's where my concern is. So I'm going to turn it over to Jack.
So this is a topic that we can definitely have more
information on. This is just the beginning. How many of you knew about ABLE accounts? Raise your hand. Okay, a lot of them did. Okay. How many of you got something new, or is it all the same? Okay, something new. Okay, so maybe what we could do is gather some more questions from everybody through our website and get more honed in on this if we need to. But I'd like to go with our next speaker right now. Julie, thank you so much. The State Council on Developmental Disabilities is awesome. Julie has been doing this forever, forever, forever. I have worked with the State Council for many, many years, but we had never met. It's been a phone conversation with Julie. But our next speaker, Jack Dawajian, is someone that I have known for 25 years or so. He worked at Lanterman Regional Center when I worked at Lanterman Regional Center, and we were like service coordinators around the same time. And he just worked quietly, you know, very quiet person. And the next thing I know, he took off and he started his own business. And he has one of the most incredible services, and it's right in, if you live in Glendale or here in the Foothill area, he's in Glendale. And a lot of you, I asked our board members, they didn't know about you. And I'm like, I can't believe it. So Jack is going to introduce a very important topic called supported living and independent living. These are topics you need to discuss with your service coordinator. And, but he's going to give you information on how to have those discussions and tell you what these services are, because they get confusing sometimes, and depending which regional center you're at, I've heard different stories. So he's going to give you kind of what it really is. And we also have, we have some adults who are taking advantage of this service, right? And we have a panel, and they're going to speak, because we always like individuals with developmental disabilities who are actually from the regional center, like your sons and daughters, you know, being the proof that they're doing this and how they're doing it. So with no further ado, I really want to thank Jack and the guests that he brought. I don't know your names, but we'll find out pretty soon. We'll give you the mic. And Jack, you're going to tell us how it is, and you're going to help us through this maze, right?
Definitely.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Here.
Thanks, Patricia. Good evening, everyone. Before I start, if you go to what the booklet behind the booklet and sign up the ablenrc.org, you will get updates. They often have webinars, so you can learn a lot more during those webinars. So I suggest you do that, and on a regular basis, you'll get emails from them. Okay, I'm gonna. As you see, I have a modified version here, so I'm going to do a quick version of the living options that I have a presentation on. Before I start, though, we do have a panel. We invited 2 individuals, support recipients that we provide services, supported living services to, and family members of a support recipient that we provide services to. So I'm going to after I'm done, I'm going to call them to come out here, and they can share their experiences with you, okay? We have Mary, and we have Ann Connell and Kevin Connell, who we provide services to Kevin's sister, and of course...
Come up to the panel?
Yeah.
We're gonna
Okay, come on up. And we have Sean in the back. Sean, you want to come up? So you're gonna get an idea of what their journey was towards independence. And every single individual, all 3 individuals, do live independently in their own apartments. But it took a lot for them to get to this point. So we have Sean, Mary, Ann, and Kevin. Okay, real quick, I'm gonna just, if we can go to the next slide. These are all options for someone to live in as independent as possible. Of course, the first one is completely obvious, a family's home, right? That could be set up in different ways for your loved ones to live independently. There's an alternative residential model, or the ARM model, which we often referred to as group homes. There are different levels of group homes, level 2, 3, 4. By the way, you guys are taking pictures of this. If you want, I can email you the whole presentation. Just let me know. Which, by the way, group home I'm not fond of, I'll tell you that, my personal family home agency, often referred to FHA. FHA is somewhat new. It's been around for maybe 4 or 5 years now. Not a lot of regional centers advocate for FHA. They may not even tell you what FHA is. It's similar to foster parents, basically. So what you do if your loved one wants to move out of the home, they can go live with another family, and that family will receive a small stipend, monthly stipend, but at the same time there would be a service provider like us providing all the training and the supports to that individual and the family, including training, by the way. But it has the FHA or the family home that is vendored has to abide by certain guidelines and certain educationals, I guess. Then we come to adaptive skills and community integration program. These are both services that your sons or daughters may receive before they hit age 18 or age 22, which is school age. A lot of times you may have heard if your son or daughter is attending high school and they're in the FACTS program. How many of you guys know FACTS program? The transition program, right? 18 to 22. A lot of times regional center says, no, there's nothing because it's a duplicative service and we can't give you any ILS, independent living services. But there is adaptive skills or community integration, which is not considered a duplicative service because it is community-based. They basically go out into the community, and it's very similar to independent living services. They teach them how to become as independent as possible, go out in the community, maybe do some shopping, some safety skills, mobility training, budgeting. So.
I thought adaptive skills was where you develop adaptive tools.
Well, when you look at the program designs, they're set up more as independent living services. And then, of course, we have the independent living and supported living. Now, read the note. I put, although state regulations cover all regional centers, each regional center may have different guidelines for each service as they consider state regulations to be minimum requirements or standards. A lot of times, this is a way for them to deny services, so be careful of that. So independent living services, anyone who receives, traditionally ILS was a big ticket item for regional centers. Around 2010, 2011, when the state had a big budget crunch, the first thing they touched was ILS because it was a high ticket item for regional centers. So before, regional centers used to provide ILS, and they didn't really do any adaptive skills, community integration, any of that. They just, you went and said, I want ILS for my child or my daughter, my son. Even if they went to high school, they said, sure, we'll give you about 15 hours a month, which is about 3.5 hours a week. But then budget crunch came, they said no to ILS, and then they said no more than 2 years, and you may still hear these things, but they're not in regulation. When you look at Title 17, none of that is in regulation. It all depends on how much stomach you have to fight the regional center to get services.
Second, we have 2 cars blocking. We have somebody leaving with a van, the Mazda 7RKX100 needs to move their car, please, and the Volkswagen 7UM G941, a black Volkswagen. Is that yours? Okay. It just needs to move it. Thank you.
So independent living services is typically, at this time, is typically given to individuals 22 and over. And again, they do tell you, some, not all, they've been better at this. They do tell you, oh, no more than 2 years, but make sure it's not written in the IPP, right? We'll get to the IPP pretty soon, which is individual program plan. Don't make sure it does not say 2 years in the IPP, right? Because the IPP is your ultimate contract with them. And then there's supported living services. The only real requirement for supported living services is for an individual to live in their own home or apartment and have the contract in their name. All right, that is an absolute requirement. The difficulty comes, especially now, is finding an affordable housing. By the way, City of Glendale, even if you don't live, you should apply for it, has an opening for Section 8 vouchers. They have 31 or 32 available, and they've already received, I think, close to 8,000 applications. But go ahead, and I still suggest you guys go on their website and complete the application. You never know what happens. It's a lottery system. And they will have another project coming up by probably October 2019. Fifth and Sonora, there's going to be 7 apartments that are allocated strictly to developmentally disabled adults. It is a senior housing of 66 units, out of which 7 are specifically allocated. That is not out yet, but pretty soon, probably mid-2019, that will come up as well. But keep your eyes out. Okay, next slide, please. So service request process. Ask for a list of SLS, ILS, whatever the service you want. Ask for a list. You know, I'm here. It's very easy for me to say, you know what, go and say, I want modern sports services. That's not me. I'm telling you guys what you should do because it will ultimately benefit you as parents and for your children. Ask for different agencies. Talk to those agencies. Contact them. Call them. Visit them. What makes one agency better over another? You know what? All agencies are supposed to follow the same laws and guidelines. The one that would be best for you is the one that fits your needs. It's as simple as that. No one agency has a great deal different than others. Now, certain agencies like ours, we may be a little bit more innovative on doing things, and we may have more contacts within different cities because we're always out there. We're always trying to make connections with cities. Like you'll see one of our flyers we just created. We got 2 gardening plots from City of Glendale, Parks and Rec. So we're starting gardening. I think twice a week they can go and plant seeds, and we provide the seeds, and the city's providing the tools, and they just go in and spend time. But guess what happens during that time? They form friendships because they're not the only ones going. It'll probably be anywhere from 3 to 7 individuals going and gardening if they like gardening. Once you have decided the service and vendor, you can either make a verbal or written requests. Make a specific agency request. To make sure you make a specific agency request. Usually an answer should be provided to you within 30 days. Don't wait weeks and weeks and weeks. And don't take the excuse from the service coordinator, oh, I've been busy, oh, I have a caseload of 100. I used to have a caseload of 120. Now they have a caseload of about 67 to 69. That's an easy out. Stay on top of it. And when it comes to the service provider too, if I'm doing a mistake, then I want to know about it and I want to correct it. That's just the way I am. That's how I run the agency.
Isn't it in the Lanham Act that actually to request the agency, they have to have all the services in place within 30 days?
They do, but I want to know anyone that requests it and gets it in 30 days. Great. You're 1 out of 50. So, but again, here's the other thing though. Have a good relationship with your service coordinator, right? It's about relationships. If you have a good relationship, they'll advocate for you. They'll know who your son and daughter is, and they'll advocate for you. Call an IPP in writing. Make sure you have it in writing, because if you don't, I've heard a lot of situations where things get lost and now you have to request it again, or a service coordinator quits and now the manager is taking over. There's no record of it. So request it in writing. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, next slide. Service request. Okay, so the IPP is your ultimate contract. Don't forget that. Do not sign the IPP or any other forms until you are satisfied about its content. Make sure it's person-centered. Make sure it revolves and evolves around the individual that your loved one, your son, your daughter. They often make it too broad and too general, where nothing. It'll just say, "Would like to live independently in the next year. Would like to receive ILS services, or would like to get adaptive services." Make it more precise. Put some timelines, deadlines on when you expect, and you said 30 days. Make sure that is in the IPP. It says 30 days, or based on Title 17 guidelines or regulations. Provide your service coordinator with enough time to type the IPP, and at the same time keep in mind your timelines. If you're denied any service, you have the right to ask for a denial letter. Often they'll contact you and say, "Oh, you know what, we're not going to be able to provide ILS this time around. Maybe we can just revisit this in the next IPP." If you disagree, or if you agree and say, "Okay, no problem," now technically that was a denial, but since you're okay with it, they just move on.
It's been our experience that it's better not to just rely on the IPP when you have a relationship with an agency. It's better in the IPP to ask for an individual service plan, and so then the agency is required then to say what they are going to do for your child. Whereas an IPP just says, my child wants to do this and do that and do this and do that. But there's nothing in the IPP. You have to have things in there that holds the agency accountable. Like, for example, you would say, "I'd like to have an individual service plan," and in the service plan, I'd like it to say when the services will start, what exactly the services will be, when will they be, who's going to deliver it, get it really nailed down as far as what exactly the agency is going to do, who's going to staff them, and what the training of the staff is. What is the training that you're
Right. So that process is after you receive the services, right? The ISP is formed by the agency, but not until you get that agency to provide the services.
in your
Sometimes you
IPP?
need to go in with it. It's better to go in with the information and with your schedule written out and what you plan on doing, because I think it makes it more something definite that they see you have a plan.
Sure.
What the regional center doesn't tell you, and the agencies don't tell you, is that in your IPP, you can say, "I want my son or daughter to have an individual service plan before the services start." Anything that's in the IPP, that's the contract, so that's where it's really important.
Okay.
Again, I'd like to have everybody hold questions so we could get.
That's okay.
Yeah, we need to.
But it's 8:30. I know we're limited in time. So what I'm going to do is pass on and give an opportunity to the panel to talk a little bit about their experience. So every single person here, Sean, Mary, and Mrs. Connell's daughter and Kevin's sister, come from a different background. I want them to briefly explain to you to where they were and where they are now, and why they chose the path towards independence and towards getting their own apartment. Is that, Sean, you're okay with that? All right, I'll give the mic.
Hi, my name is Sean, and I was originally in a group home, and it didn't fit my liking because I didn't feel like I fit, and so I chose to broaden my perspective and try and gain some independence, and so then I went into supported living, and that's where I stand now in my own apartment, and I'm very happy.
Sean, how long did it take you to get your own apartment?
3 years.
How long were you in a group home before that?
Since 1999 till 2000. 13, I think, or 14. So, quite a while.
What are some of the things you like being independent?
I enjoy the fact that I can decide when and where I want to go for the most part, and I can decide how I'm going to get there and what I'm going to do and so on and so forth.
You want to pass it on?
What do you do during the week?
It depends on if I have an appointment, but basically I choose what I want to do, and it varies depending on if I have an appointment or a doctor's appointment or something. But for the most part, whatever I choose to do.
Sean,
Yes.
supportive services do you get to enable you to live independently?
What do you mean? I don't.
What service that you require and that you get?
Support.
Well, I have supported living. I have a staff with me, and that helps me out and does things that I need.
Do you pay your own bills? Do you take care of all your finances by yourself?
To a certain extent, yes, but I have a pay because that's just the way that I had it set up before, so it's the way that it is right now. But
Do you have organized social activities with other friends and peers
yes,
that your SLS agency organizes for you?
not that they per se organize, but I basically decide to do it, and then I do it. If that makes sense.
Hello, everybody. My name's Mary. I was in the system since I was 9 months. I grew up in very bad neighborhood, abused, abandoned, and I lived in group homes my whole life. I thought it was never going to amount to anything because I was always told you're going to be institutionalized. Basically, you're going to be locked up. And a light bulb came up to me one day when it says, you know what? The way I'm acting is not okay, you know? And I got to live in a group home, and they finally, I consider it saved my life with elderlies. And I started seeing that, okay, I can do it, I can do it. I got a job. I got a lot of things from being and learning a lot of domestic skills. And basically, when I chose to move out on my own, it was really a choice that I had to make because I kept telling myself, no, I'm going to live in group homes my whole life. That's what I lived. That's all I knew. But I got the opportunity to think about it. I had a friend who told me one day, Mary, you're 20-something and you're still in a group home. You're very high functioning. You can do it on your own. And it clicked to me one day, and I said, you know what? So I was sitting at a Goodwill table, and I said, you know what? Let me call my service coordinator. And I said, I want to live on my own, She said, well, you're working, save up $15, show us that now $1,500 to pay for first and last month's rent. I was doing that with my my money, and she's like, if you can show us that you can budget your money, then we can guarantee you to live on your own. So I actually got my own place, and now I love my own place. I'm not told when to go to bed. I'm not told what to do. I'm actually told in my own house, myself, that I can do it. A lot of the services that I get it's like, to be honest with you, I looked at other services and other people when I was first moved because I was North LA Regional Center. And I kind of looked when I was taking a strive to move on my own. I told them I didn't want to move to no other company. I wanted to stay with Jack because I've known him for a long time, He's known me through my struggles and stuff like that. So I felt like, I got a charisma, And I was living on my own for, I think, 4 years, right, Jack, in the Glendale one? About 4 years in a studio. And now I consider my place that I live at a mansion because I live in a 1-bedroom, 543, been living there. It opened up about 3 years. Actually, Sean moved there too. So I'm living now from a single apartment that didn't have AC, that didn't have heaters, to an actual 1-bedroom, you know? And I kind of look at it like, dang, you know, I have the support. Even if I have hard times, I know I can rely on my caretakers. I know I can rely on myself. But majority of it, I do myself, because that's all I have is me. You know, I don't have family like that. You know, I probably have one sister, but I don't rely on her like that, you know? So it's just me, you know? So I completely consider myself like proud that I made the decision myself because I was going another stride, you know? And I once, you know, did it, but, you know, I kind of tell people that I'm kind of like a testament to people to show that when people tell you, now I'm going to tell everybody else, that's not what I am. And I just want to say thank to the company and Regional Center.
Can you tell us about your work?
Me? I don't work anymore, but I went from working through a base program through the Regional Center, which was at Goodwill. I worked there, and then I went from Goodwill to Foothill Vocational Opportunities, which basically is programs for disabled people to be able to work, but it's kind of like piece rate. So the faster you work, the more money you make. The more you bring out, the more money you make. I didn't like that in per se, so I ended up telling my job coach and my case manager, I want to look into having a job. So I actually got a job at Goodwill. I actually got a job at Goodwill at a store. Then I got a job at Target. And then when I moved to Glendale, I actually got a job at the day program that I was a client at for probably my whole life. I became a counselor's aide, helping other people that like me, you know. And then from there, I'm just doing what I can with my life now, you know what I'm saying? So
you still work as a date at a daycare?
no, I don't work at the daycare anymore because of my personal issues. I would like to. Hopefully in the future I can go back to it, but right now I'm just trying to take care of myself first, you know, and then pursue on that later.
Upon the lines of apartments, I came from my first apartment that, for one thing, it was a very bad area and for another thing, the managers didn't manage the apartment very well. They had gotten written up by the health agency a few times upon the lines because hot water heater had burst, and they just put a clamp on it and said that it was fixed. And then I had a bunch of towels folded up in the closet, and one day I went in there and I felt it, and I said, "These are wet," and it ended up being that I had mold growing in the closet, and they had to rip a whole huge hole in my wall in the ceiling. So the apartment that I'm in right now is so much better. I'm so happy that I was able to get it.
One more thing to say to that. I came from a group home. I came where, when I was younger, I thought I had to steal. I thought I had to steal to provide for things. And I think with me now, I live knowing that, okay, you know what? I don't need to steal, you know? I'm doing it on my own, you know? So I kind of like look at it like, you know, hey, every child deserves an opportunity to find that dream home one day and be able to say, this is mine. Nobody's going to take it from me but me because I worked for it. You know, and that's why I kind of chose the company that I did, because it's like I felt like I learned behaviors that I had when I was younger and I adapted when I was younger. I still have hard times, but I've learned how to talk to them instead of kicking my staff out and telling them, I don't want you guys to be here anymore, instead of hitting people. And, you know, I went from being in the hospital every 2 months to now I probably go once or twice a year for psych. So that's a testament to myself, too, that my life is getting better being on my own.
Hi, my name is Ann Connell. We are with Modern Support Services who provides our supported living services. And just so you all know, supported living service is usually 24 hours, and you have a staff. And one of the things that was surprising to us is it's not just one person living with your child. It is a team. And the team was built by Ani, who's standing back there, who works with Jack. And we were so happy because this was not the first time we tried this. We had another agency working with Kimmy, and basically they got the people off the street. These people are trained, they're professional, they're educated. And Modern Support Services is contracted with Tom Pomerantz, who comes in and gives the staff training a couple times a year, the management training, and then they give the staff training. And they have to constantly, the staff people, go back and, go through, training, which is amazing because of what our previous experience was. And so Kimmy has a team of about 5 people right now, with 1 floater, 1 sub. And she gets, full 24-hour service. She does get IHSS, though, also 56 hours a week, which was, they came in and evaluated and gave her that. So she has a person who's not an employee of SLS or Modern Support Services that comes in 3 times a week for 4 hours. What Kimmy does during the week is she has a full schedule. On Mondays, she does laundry and grocery shopping and goes to her neuropsych. On Tuesday, she goes to school. She's taking a computer class. She really likes computers. On Wednesday, she goes and volunteers at a nonprofit. On Thursday, she grocery shops again. She goes to the gym. And on Friday is Free Friday, so to speak. But she's got a full schedule. She's very outgoing, very high functioning. She loves to do things. I think she runs her staff ragged sometimes. And we were just so very happy, and it all comes down to the agency that we're with, Modern Support Services, who actually, they are just so thorough in vetting the people that they hire. And so that you really feel comfortable with, who is working with your child. So anyway, I will pass this on to my son, Kevin, who is actually co-conservator now. My husband was supposed to come, but he wasn't feeling well. So we substituted Kevin. Came down from San Francisco.
Sure, you guys have some questions. Just to kind of complement what she's already said, maybe add additional perspective on, the transition point and maybe some of the things that you all might be thinking through. So Kimmy, some facts about Kimmy. She's 38. She's diagnosed with autism. She's 40. She's diagnosed with autism. She's been living independently for 4 years. She's been with 2 different SLS agencies. Prior to that, she was at home. And so talking about the transition point, going back to the original question that Jack asked, we made that transition at 34, or 36. I can't add tonight. So we were very late in the game. Sounds like Sean and Mary were much earlier. And kudos to them for navigating it on their own. We were pretty lost. We had a situation where we had an individual at home that really could no longer stay at home. And we were prolonging the decision and not seeing an option that made sense. We looked at group homes, we looked at independent living, we looked at a few other options. They were either very expensive, $70,000 a year expensive. They were dangerous in terms of group homes, or they were options that just were going to take years and years and years and years. And so we were sort of pushed into a corner at the transition point with some incidents that happened that caused my sister to be put into a hospital. And maybe some of you are familiar with those types of incidents, but seeing your sister in College Hospital expedites that process. So I talked to Jack at that point, and Jack gave me a really long overview on SLS and opened my eyes to it. And it made a lot of sense for us for a lot of reasons. Number one, it was affordable. The state steps in and pays for these services, right? So you're cutting your budget in half. Now you only have to pay for the housing and the food. So that was number one. Number two, it was customized. With a group home, you have multiple people in there, and the staff to person ratio is very low, very high, excuse me. And in terms of tailoring, SLS provides that one-on-one support along with additional tailoring to that support. So, you know, we do a lot of work with Ani and her team to figure out weekly what Kimmy's up to and tailor it to her. So that was number 2. Number 3, it was relatively pliable. I mean, we didn't have to kind of accept the home and the circumstance. We could choose the home. We could put it in a place that was, you know, convenient and affordable, and you know, control some of those factors you can't control with group living, right? Where you're sort of placed in maybe a bad neighborhood. So those are some of the major thoughts that I would have about this transition point. It was really hard on Mom, and we've been through quite a bit together on this. But as you can tell, she's very satisfied, and you know, happy to take any questions.
So this one's for Jack. When you go to the regional center, they say that you cannot get supportive living services if your son or daughter lives in the house, that they have to have left the house, and they cannot be in your house and request the service. They have to be out of your house. Otherwise, and the service that they will offer you is independent living skills. So is that true? Because I hear different things from different regional centers. And so, and most of the people here are from Lanterman, right? Most of them are. Who else is from another regional center? North LA? North LA. Okay, and then East LA? Okay, East LA and West. Okay, but the majority are Lanterman, and you'll hear different stories. So you work with a lot of regional centers, so you don't work
Yeah, but that's typically right. They won't give you supported living services if your son or daughter is living at home. What we typically say is, why don't we start off with ILS, or independent living services? Or sometimes, depending on the regional center, they'll say okay to what we call transition supported living services. So we get a small amount of hours. We basically do a lot of apartment search, and it's not much, but some regional centers do that. But typically, it's ILS to start off with.
Because that's the first thing, because when you go to your IPP, you have to know the terminology, you have to know what you're asking. That good word, transition, ILS services, is a good word to, if your son or daughter is already, is in your home. Okay. The other thing that I know that families have done, if they can afford it, they get duplex. You know, where you can have your son, you know, some of you may not want to have your son or daughter too far away from you, and I don't blame you, because there may be a lot of issues, or you just want to, you know, kind of keep an eye. And some families have, if they can afford it, they're looking for a duplex where, you know, you can live in the front, they can live in the back. And guess what? They're independent. Now you get supported living services because they're not physically in your house. They're in another section, but you're basically there. So that's another thing that I know. The other thing I want to ask you is, okay, you can answer to that one too, but I want them to get very practical tips, because the supported living thing, you can't go too broad. You know, it's very tricky because it's customized. It could be 24. Okay, another myth. Oh, but that's only for people who are high functioning, you know, in parentheses, or independent. No, they're very involved individuals getting supported living services. So it's not made for one particular person or another. It's very customized to what they need. So I'm going to turn it to Jack, but get very specific on.
It's regardless of the intensity of the disability. That's based on Title 17. So it doesn't matter if they need total care or they're completely independent and they just want 5 hours a week and live in their own apartments. That can be considered supported living. Some regional centers may also tell you, well, unless it's 24/7, then we're not going to give you supported living. That's not true. You can get, again, as I said, it can be 5 hours a week and it can be called supported living. It doesn't have to be called ILS or anything else. You know, there are, the good thing about supported living is there are number of different ways of setting it up. It's between you and don't get me wrong, it's a lot of hard work. It's not easy. Supported living services is probably one of the most complex services you can receive, right? Because it's a lot of involvement on your end and on an agency end. We take a lot of we put in a lot of time, a lot of effort to make things right. But you have to realize also, at the end of the day, we are not the parents. Your role is different, and our role as an agency is different. You may have certain things that you can do because your role as a parent. For us, we cannot do that because if we are able to do that, we have to take maybe 5 to 10 different steps in order to reach that goal. For you as a parent, it might be much easier. So you have to kind of weigh that. I'm going to have Ani, who is one of our support coordinators, chime in.
Okay. So just to kind of touch on that, I work a lot with our support recipients to develop activities. So a lot of the activities that have been mentioned today, we kind of help facilitate everything. So whatever their interest is, we try to get as creative as possible. So to list some evening activities, we do things like movie nights, right? So if we find a resource for a movie night, we pass it on to all of our support recipients. Is it free? Is it affordable? Is it something that's accepting of individuals with disabilities? So the support coordinators, like myself, are always looking for resources within the community for them to access. So a lot of times we're spending, time trying to get them encouraged and motivated to do these things. So a lot of it is initially scheduling and figuring out where they can go. But so yeah, movies, cooking classes, going to various different classes in the evenings. A lot of them are night owls sometimes, so they want to go. Yes.
It's the essence.
Yeah. Yeah, so essentially, you kind of have to take their interests and get creative with this. So that's essentially what we do when we are helping to develop activities and facilitate activities. We start with their interests and then utilize all the resources we can find from there on out.
Whatnot. But like my other child that is not has special needs, they all get together and rent a house. So
Right.
there's 4 of them. And so, do you have
Yes.
to have the same SLS agency?
No, you don't. You can have 2 separate SLS agencies in a home. Patricia touched up on something that I wanted to expand on. You can have a back house as long as it has a different address. It can be A and B. Then that's considered independent living. You can also have, believe it or not, we have one case. Regional centers don't like this, but I'll say it because it can be done. It's not illegal. You can have a family member provide the actual service. Now, I'm not saying that is a good thing because I don't think it is, but it depends on the family. So if you have a son who has a disability and you would like your other son or daughter to be part of that team, SLS team, we're able to do that. A lot of regional centers and a lot of agencies don't like that. But remember, if they are working for the agency now they have to comply with agency regulations and guidelines. So it's not just because they're providing services to their brother or sister, they can't just say, I don't feel like going to training, or I don't feel like doing drug test, or whatever. No, if they don't, then there's a consequence for it. So there are different ways of providing services and providing emergency supports, but you need to be able to work through that.
I was just going to say something. In the state of California, as of last January, I think it was, the ADUs have been really encouraged to develop, which is like granny flats, accessory dwelling units. So if you have a property large enough, if you can convert your garage or put something else on there, as long as you have a different plaque, that could be a rental unit. That's a possibility.
Well, yeah, that is ideal, but I came across someone a couple of weeks ago. He opened his business to do that, and he was telling me how difficult it was to do that in Pasadena, because it's difficult across the board. I guarantee you, they'll put in lieu fees of up to $20,000, and then you'll be like, $20,000 in lieu fee? It'll cost me $10,000 to build it. I'm gonna pay an extra $20,000 in lieu fee. It's just yeah. But I agree. I mean, again.
It's different, but I know what you're saying. The other thing is, I have a question. Let's just say you have another quote-unquote rental place that has like 3 bedrooms. Can you put people with different, either with disabilities, like 3 autistic kids in the same place?
Yes.
But then Like, if you're the owner, are you supposed to charge them rent, or how does that work? Like,
Yeah, if you're a family member and you want your son to live in that apartment, the 3-bedroom apartment, but at the same time rent it out to 2 other individuals, yeah, you can charge them, let's say $500 rent per room per month, right? And each one has a separate room, and each one will receive services from a different vendor if they choose to.
do you have to go to the regional center and get certified, or?
For the home? No, you don't. A lot of regional centers, if you're up to 3 in a home, they'll just say it's okay. Some regional centers might give you a little bit of a hard time because they think it's licensing is going to come down and consider it a group home, but in reality it isn't. I gave you that story. They live in Lakewood. I think it's Lakewood or Long Beach. They have four bedrooms, 4 individuals live in it. We've been providing and they were getting services from different agencies. Eventually, everyone ended up choosing Modern Sport Services. We don't, no pressure, that's just the way it worked. It could have gone the other way. What? I'm sorry? Do we have a territory? We're vendored with 5 out of 7 regional centers within LA County, and Orange County has 1 regional center that covers the entire county, and we're vendored with them. So LA and Orange County, pretty much. We don't have anyone within San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center, and actually all other 6 we do provide services to. Elark, South Central, Lanterman, West Side, Harbor, and North LA. We hire people from there, right? We have an office in Orange County.
I have kind of a two-part question. One is, how do you do the match-up of tools with what individuals? And the second part of that is that, is it you who determine if that person needs a 24/7 care, or is it something that the parent or the guardian says that, I feel like I want this for my individual?
Yeah, we go through an assessment, and the assessment is coming to your home, meeting with you and with your son or daughter, and figuring out what the needs are. And based on that, we'll make a proposal to regional center. But from the very beginning, if you say we want 24/7, we'll try to justify that. If it's not warranted, we'll tell you, you know what, we're not going to be able to get 24/7. I don't think your son or daughter will need it. So we'll try 8 hours a day, or 16 hours a day, or 20 hours a day, and we'll see how it goes. If we need to, then we'll request more. It can vary, up or down, it can vary. As far as match, we go through an employment. We place an ad, we pick people, but what we try to do is we hire after the fact, after receiving the referral, because we want to know who we're hiring for. We don't have a pool of 20 staff sitting around so that when we get a referral, we'll say, okay, number 2, number 5, number 10, you guys are going there. We don't have that. So we get the referral, we get the funding, and then we say, okay, and that's exactly why a lot of times, this is one of the frustrating portions of SLS, families get frustrated. Well, when are you going to start? Well, you know what, if it's 24/7, I need to hire about 6, maybe 7, anywhere between 5 and 7 individuals. Guess what, especially now, as she put it, with pay rates, with unemployment being lowest for the past 25 years or so, it takes a lot of time, a lot of interviews to go through. You schedule an interview, out of 10 probably, and I'm not exaggerating, 3 will be no-shows. You already lost 30%. From the 7 you have, probably 3 are not a good match during the first phase of the interview. Now you're down to 4. So now you're interviewing 4 and trying to pick one. Well, that takes time. It can take anywhere from 3 months to 6 months but we're constantly running ads. There's no time that we say, okay, no more ads. We're constantly running ads, constantly interviewing, constantly rehiring and hiring. It's almost like we also serve as a staffing agency. So there's a lot of things to juggle as an agency to make sure that everything fits together.
Right. Anyway, it's very creative. We can spend more time on this. I want to thank the panel. Where did they all go? They're already. Thank you so much for coming. I really Really enjoyed you breaking it down like you did. Jack, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. It is 9:30. I know everybody's tired, but I really thank everybody for staying. And we'll have more of this. We'll bring more of this topic. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.